first college football playoff rankings of the 2022 football season are out, and the TCU Horned Frogs, despite being 8-0, find themselves on the outside looking in on these first rankings at number 7. Did they get screwed? Pull up a chair, sit back, relax, and let's talk about it. What is up, college sports fans, Big 12 fans, and fellow members of Mountaineer Nation? This is Coos, and welcome in to another edition of Coos' Corner. So pull that chair up and let me serve you up another shot of top-shelf college football content. On tap in this episode, we're talking college football playoff rankings, the very first rankings of the 2022 season, coming out here in Week 10 after the Week 9 games that just took place over the weekend. Now, a lot of people around the country, especially in Big 12 country, and I'm sure over in Fort Worth and TCU country, are not happy about these rankings, these first rankings that come out. TCU finds themselves sitting at number 7 in this week's rankings, and a lot of people think that they should be a lot higher. A lot of people are arguing that they have a better resume than several of the teams ahead of them. And I'm going to give you my opinion on it, kind of compare the resumes of these teams, and let you know at the end, do I think TCU is getting robbed by being number 7 in these rankings? First thing let's do is let's look at the rankings. I'll let you look at them with me here. All right, first we have the Tennessee Volunteers. At 8-0, we have number 2, the Ohio State Buckeyes, 3, the Georgia Bulldogs, 4, the Clemson Tigers. That would be your top 4 playoff teams if the playoffs were to start today. At 5, we have Michigan. 6, we have Alabama. And then we have TCU sitting there at number 7 at 8-0. As you see, Alabama 7-1, the only team in the top 7 with a loss. Continuing on, we have Oregon at number 8, USC at number 9, LSU at 10, Ole Miss sits at number 11, UCLA 12, Kansas State 13, Utah 14, Penn State 15, Illinois at 16, UNC at 17, Oklahoma State at 18, Tulane at 19, the first group of 5 team in these rankings. Syracuse sits at number 20, Wake Forest sits at number 21, North Carolina State at 22, Oregon State at number 23, Texas at 24, and UCF out of the American Conference, the second group of 5 team, sits at number 25. And they're at Texas at 24 is the only 5-3 team in these rankings, and are the 4th Big 12 team to appear. Now, when you look at, I think it's hard to argue with the first 3, Tennessee, Ohio State, Georgia. Those 3, I think it's really hard to argue with, to be honest. Tennessee's got the big win over Alabama. They've looked dominant, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Ohio State has looked dominant. Georgia has looked dominant for the most part. Had a couple games they haven't looked as good, but they're still beating teams fairly handily. Even games they haven't looked good, they've still won, pretty easily at the end. And then Clinton, where the controversy lies is 4 through 7. You got Clemson, Michigan, Alabama, and TCU. A lot of TCU fans and even a lot of just Big 12 fans in general are not happy that TCU is behind those 3 teams, and they feel like TCU stakes a claim or should have a claim to the number 4 spot. Well, let's look at the resumes of these teams. So I've kind of took some notes here, and I'm going to kind of let you know I'm going to kind of go over the resumes with you here, and you let me know in the comments, do you think TCU has a better resume than these other 3 teams? And do you think they deserve to be in that number 4 spot? When you look at TCU's resume, obviously they're 8-0. Their wins are against Colorado, arguably one of the worst teams in the Power 5. Tarleton, who I've never even heard of until now. SMU, a 500 football team out of the American Conference. They beat Oklahoma at home. A huge dominant win over Oklahoma. Yes, it's a good win, but Oklahoma's not the Oklahoma we're used to, so they're not that good of a team this year, and it was at home. Now, that being said, they did beat Oklahoma handily, so that was impressive. They beat Kansas, who at the time was ranked. It looked like a really good win at the time, but since then, Kansas has went on to lose a couple more games and now sits at 5-3 on the season, so that doesn't look like as good a win. It was on the road at Kansas, though, so that does, that's a pretty good win. And then they beat Oklahoma State at home by I think it was a 3-point victory. And then they beat Kansas State this past week, or they beat Kansas State a couple weeks ago at home. And then they went on the road to beat my West Virginia Mountaineers, who gave them all they can handle. West Virginia actually had a chance to win that game and was driving with less than 5 minutes to go, and had their offense not stumbled, could have taken the lead in that game. When you look at the best road win for TCU, really it's that Kansas win. They went on the road at Kansas, beat them. Like I said, since then, Kansas has faltered some. They're down at 5-3. And their best win overall, I would say, would be the Kansas State win. They have arguably played the two best teams on the schedule in Kansas State and Oklahoma State already, and they did win both of those games. However, they do still have to go to Texas to play the Longhorns in Austin. That'll be a tough matchup, and that should give them a good quality road win if they can get it. But TCU will have to win out, in my opinion, to get in, to have even a chance to get in the college football playoff, and they still may not get in. All right, let's look at Alabama, who came in at number 6 in the rankings with that 7-1 record. Alabama's wins are against Utah State, a Group of 5 team. They did win on the road at Texas. They only won by 1 point. It was a really close game, really hard fought game, and it took a last second field goal to win it. But it was on the road, so you got to give them credit for that. Texas is a 5-3 team and sits at number 24 in these rankings. They beat UL Monroe, another Group of 5 team. They destroyed Vanderbilt, but no disrespect, but it's Vanderbilt. Come on, that's not a quality win. They did beat Arkansas on the road, who's now sits at 5-3. They're not a bad team. They beat Texas A&M at home, but let's be honest. Were it not for a bad play call by Jimbo Fisher at the end of that game, Texas A&M may have won that football game. Alabama did not look impressive in that game at all. So that win doesn't really impress you. And Texas A&M has a losing record right now. So that win to me doesn't impress at all. They did lose. The one loss is to Tennessee, which is not a bad loss, but they gave up 52 points in that game, which to me kind of negates the argument that the committee used for why they put Alabama ahead of TCU, which I'll touch on later in the video. Then you got Mississippi State. Mississippi State's a 5-3 team. Alabama beat them at home, so they're again not a fantastic win, but a good win, a decent win. So I'll say Alabama's best road win is obviously that Texas game. Their best win overall, you could say the Texas game's also the best win overall. You could make the argument that Mississippi State or Arkansas is a better win, but either way, they beat a 5-3 team on the road in Texas. Probably their best win and definitely their best road win. Look at Clemson, who came in at number 4. They've beaten Georgia Tech, again a terrible team. Furman, an FCS team. Louisiana Tech, a Group of 5 team. They did beat Wake Forest on the road, a really hard-fought game. I think it even went into overtime. So that's a good quality win. They beat NC State at home. That's a good win. They beat Boston College, Florida State, Syracuse. No, the Florida State win was a road win, but Florida State's not a ranked team right now. The Syracuse win's not a bad team. They're sitting at 6-2. NC State also sitting at 6-2. That's not a bad win either. In my opinion, their best win overall is probably the Wake Forest win. You could argue the Syracuse win is just as good as well, or even the NC State win. But the Wake Forest win, by it being on the road, is their best road win and their best overall win, in my opinion. But they have beaten 3 6-2 football teams this year. Now you look at Michigan, who came in at number 5, just out of the top 4. Now, Michigan has been beating most of their opponents handily. They've been winning all but one of their wins, and they're 8-0. All but one of their wins have been by at least 2 touchdowns. So they have been beating most of their opponents handily, but here are their opponents. Colorado State, Group of 5 team. Hawaii, Group of 5 team. UConn, an independent, but a program that's struggling right now. They are on the rise. Jim Moore Jr. does seem to have them moving in the right direction, but let's face it, it's UConn. Their program has been a dumpster fire. They beat Maryland. That was a close game. That is the one win they have that's by less than 2 scores. They went on the road and beat Iowa. And look, that normally would be impressive, but Iowa's 4-4 this year, and their offense is absolutely atrocious. Might be the worst offense in all of Power 5. So that win to me is not an impressive win at all. They beat Indiana again, not a good win. They did beat Penn State, and they beat Penn State handily. They dominated Penn State at home. That's a nice win. Penn State was ranked in the top 10 when they beat them. And then they have a win at home against Michigan State, who's struggling this year. When you look at the best road win for Michigan, would be the Iowa win. A 4-4 Iowa team is really the only quality road win Michigan has right now. And to be honest, the only chance Michigan even has to get a quality road win the rest of the way is against Ohio State in the last game of the season. They have to go to Columbus, and they have to play the Buckeyes in the Horseshoe. So if Michigan can go on the road, if they can win out the rest of the way and beat Ohio State in the shoe, they would definitely earn a spot in the CFP, in my opinion. Obviously, that would depend also on what happened in the conference title game. But assuming they win the conference title game, that would get them in. But other than that, they really don't have a good quality road win. Their best win overall would be their win over Penn State, who's sitting right now at 6-2 on the season. So I'll be honest with you. I can't really sit here looking at the resumes of these 4 football teams, TCU, Alabama, Clemson, and Michigan. I really cannot see where one of these teams' resumes stand out over the other one. Now, they're probably giving Alabama a little bit of benefit of the doubt because they're Alabama, and I can't really blame them for that. Alabama has earned that right, in my opinion. And the eye test will tell you Alabama's a good football team. Now, yes, they've struggled a few games on defense here and there, but they at the end of the day, they usually end up winning the game. And like I said, their only loss is to the number one team in Tennessee, who was rolling this year. And it took Tennessee, it took them overtime to win that game. So Alabama is a really good football team. Um, you look at Clemson. I mean, Clemson, you could argue they're getting the benefit of the doubt as well because they have won national championships in recent memory. But there again, their resume to me. Now, look, I'm a Big 12 guy, but I can't sit here and look at these resumes and tell you that TCU's resume is head and shoulders above these other teams. I really can't. So I really don't feel like I can sit here and rant and rave about TCU getting snubbed because I don't really feel like it's that big of a snub. So I mean, really, it's hard for me to argue against any of these teams' resumes. So I really can't. I really don't have an issue at all with TCU being number 7. Now TCU will need to win out. They'll need to win at Texas and win out the rest of their games. Big 12 is beating up. They're cannibalizing each other, beating up on each other, which can hurt your strength of schedule if you win the league. So the winner of the league has to go undefeated to get in even have a chance to get in the CFP. And all these other teams are probably going to slip up at least one time. Michigan could end up losing to Ohio State, which may knock them out. Does a one-loss Michigan team with a loss over Ohio State get in over an undefeated TCU? We could come to that at the end of the season. Does Alabama lose again? They'd probably be out. Does Alabama end up winning the SEC title game over a Georgia or a Tennessee? And you could end up with 3 one-loss SEC teams. That would really throw a wrench into this thing. But my point is here, we're only in week 1 of the rankings. This thing's going to play itself out. So let's not get too overly excited about where TCU is in week 1. At number 7, they still have a shot to get in the CFP at the end of the year, but everything's got to play out. And the one thing I do have an issue with, though, is the explanation given by Boo Corrigan, who's the athletic director at NC State, who also happens to be the chair of the CFP committee this year. When he was being interviewed by Reese Davis on ESPN during the CFP ranking show, he basically said the reason they ranked TCU behind Alabama was that they didn't feel like TCU was a balanced enough team, that they were getting behind in games and that they weren't playing good enough on defense. Well, you look at Alabama. I mean, my God, they gave up 52 points to Tennessee. I know Tennessee's good, but 52 points, guys. That's a lot of points. And yes, TCU has fallen behind in some games, but Alabama's been behind some too. They got behind to Texas. I mean, they were behind it against Tennessee, obviously, they ended up losing to. And that A&M game, I mean, they didn't look impressive in that game and almost lost it. So, I mean, Alabama has not been overly impressive this year, not as impressive as I expected them to be. So I really didn't think that was a fair argument against TCU being behind Alabama. I would have rather them just come out and said, hey, Alabama's only loss is to the number 1 team, Tennessee, and it went into overtime. To me, that would make more sense than to say, well, they need to be more balanced because Alabama has not been all that balanced at times either. But at the end of the day, when it comes to the actual rankings themselves, I don't really have a big issue with where they are. I actually had more of an issue with LSU being at number 10 with a 6-2 record. I thought that was a terrible spot for them. They should not be that high, in my opinion. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to talk about TCU. So let me know in the comments section, Cougars Corner family, Big 12 fans, if there's TCU fans watching this, where am I wrong? Do you think I'm wrong in saying that TCU is getting a fair shake at number 7? Why do you think they should be higher? What am I missing here? What am I missing when comparing these resumes that should put TCU ahead of these other teams? And if you're a fan of one of these other teams, where did the committee get it right with your team, or where did they get it wrong? I want to hear your thoughts. Guys, if you want to support my channel financially and help this thing grow, you can do that in a couple different ways. Number one, check out my merch store. Right now, November 2nd through November the 6th, 2022, there's a 20% off sale going on right now for a limited time. If you've been thinking about getting some merch from my merch store, now's the time to do it. Take advantage of that 20% off sale. Link is at the top of the description box. You get ready for your cold weather with a hoodie. Get yourself a Cougars Corner hoodie. There's tank tops, t-shirts, polos, ball caps. Get you a beanie, cover your bald head up for the wintertime, whatever you want. Also, if you don't want to buy merch, you can become a member of my channel by hitting the join button right below. Take advantage of several perks I have to offer. I do some special videos. We'll give you special access to some videos, some members-only live streams. I did a drawing recently for my channel members to give away a mini helmet, different things like that that channel members have access to. Last but not least, if you want to support me absolutely free, there's 4 ways you can do it. You can like this video by hitting that thumbs up button underneath. You can share it out with your college sports loving friends. You can drop that comment below that I mentioned earlier. And last but not least, hit that red subscribe button for me if you haven't yet. My goal is to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Now, that is a really tall task, considering I'm at about 4,000 right now. 1,000 subs in 2 months is a really, really tough ask. But I think we can do it. But I need your help. So I ask you, please hit that red subscribe button for me. Guys, I really appreciate your support. I really appreciate you tuning into this show. And until the next one, Q Country Roads.